There are things going on in the Australian economy now that are not only unprecedented, they're downright weird. Not in any textbooks. As you can see, the economy is barely growing, flirting with recession. But to achieve even this level of insipid growth, the pedal is flat to the boards. There's record low interest rates, record levels of debt, booming exports and huge government spending. So there's plenty of wood and kero going onto the fire, but it's not getting hot. In fact, it's cooling. And this is not supposed to happen. And when the pie isn't growing much, people miss out. Now, in this series, you won't just hear from me, but also some key players in the economy. And I don't just mean economists and boffins, I mean you and people like you, the real key players. It's a gig economy and just about everybody's got a side hustle.
Uber for Alan?
Yep.
Hop in. So I'm 26. I'm living at home with mum and dad, and I drive an Uber just for the flexibility that it provides and the extra income that I'm able to earn from it.
You got a day job, have you?
Yeah.
What's that? What do you do?
I work in financial services as an associate advisor.
So Joel, how long have you been driving Ubers?
On and off. I've been driving for about 3 years.
It does sound like as more and more people drive, the money you can make from it is coming down.
When I first started, I was earning a couple of $100 pretty easily just by doing my sort of 4 or 5 hours on the weekend. Obviously now it's gotten a bit harder to match that level of income. I think it definitely does assist in people's day-to-day lives. It definitely gives people an ability to sort of catch up on anything that they might have lost in the past couple of years in terms of perhaps wage growth.
For millennials like Joel Cadavalo, and indeed for all of us, the economy is just not normal.
We've had periods in the past, of course, where inflation has been low, but growth's been fine. But for us to have low interest rates, low growth, low inflation all at the same time, while the labour market is strong, that is to say unemployment is also low, that's pretty unusual.
Well, arguably, it's something that we've almost never seen before. I mean, people do say it's dangerous to say this time is different, but in many respects, it is quite different.
Real household income has been stagnant since the GFC, even though our national output has been rising. When income is flat, prices don't go up, so inflation declines. The Reserve Bank is trying to combat that with record low interest rates, but it's just not working. When the Reserve Bank meets to decide interest rate movements, Ian Harper is in the room. He's agreed to give 7:30 his own personal view on why cutting interest rates towards zero is no longer working.
Normally you'd expect what that would do is to encourage people to consume more and to invest more. Now, neither of those things are happening in the way that they've done in the past. Precisely why, unless you just sort of wave your hand and say, look, it's all about uncertainty, we're not so sure, there's something in that, we really don't know the answer to that question. So what is true is that both here in Australia and elsewhere, economies aren't responding to easier monetary conditions in the way that was true in the past.
For the average Australian household, a slowing economy means tightening belts and sticking to a budget.
Ring a rosy, a pocket full of posy, a tissue, your fault. I'm ALEESHIA Bartolone and I live here in Gozzles, WA with my partner Paul. The mortgage for this house was around $330,000 4 years ago. A year after we bought this house, we had Lachlan. You're happy to push this. And then a year later, we had Hunter. It was quite hard at the beginning in our financial situation, having kids so quickly after the mortgage.
I need to in the share.
Two to share, you're gonna give one. With our budget, like when we had the kids and like money was a bit tight, things that we would cut out first would be going out for dinner. We are not fancy eaters. The kids, you know, half the time they don't eat what you cook anyway, except the pasta. So pasta's a cheap meal. It's easy. I come from an Italian background.
Gel, large flat white, extra shot.
I am a manager of a cafe in one of the big shopping centres in Perth, and Paul works away FIFO up in the mines. I wasn't eligible for maternity leave through my actual workplace. Paul changed jobs pretty quickly as well since moving here. Then he went into the mines, which again is still a casual position, has been for the last 3.5 years. First, when we bought the property, they did want $355,000 for it. We got it down to $338,000. We had it valued by a real estate agent only a couple months ago, and he said the highest we would get is around $280,000. So it has dropped quite a lot. There's always going to be peaks and troughs. We're in the trough, but I think it will start to pick up again. It has to.
There's a nervousness about the housing market, job security and wages that's playing out across the country.
What is your view about the current state of the economy? What is your data showing?
From late last year, we started to see a slowdown. The housing market, as the house prices fell, I think certainly consumer confidence was starting to take a hit during that period. We saw a slowdown in consumption. I mean, wage and income growth has been low for some period of time. But of course, what the Australian economy needs is a pick-up in income growth. We can see that. We can see the importance of that.
Every hour, about 80,000 Australians will use a Commonwealth Bank credit card. This means the bank and its CEO, Matt Comyn, know what Australians are spending.
We combine that with Google searches, where in the next minute, 60,000 Google searches will occur. We bring all of that together, and what we saw is, across a number of different areas, we saw that post the tax cuts, actually, our customers increased their spending by 28%. And housing, of course, has remained resilient. I think in a couple of other areas or categories, sentiment has weakened. And we think it's the combination of both the global backdrop, particularly the US-China trade war, I think is weighing on sentiment. I do think that having the impact of multiple rate cuts, the official cash rate coming down in pretty quick succession has also weighed on sentiment.
That's now a worse trend than we saw even in the early 1990s recession. We've had a sneaky little recession in disposable income over the last 6 or 7 years.
I'm Andrew McDonald. I'm a shoemaker and I've been making shoes for 30 years now. I think at the moment business is going through a soft patch or a rocky patch. I think the first thing that is on people's minds is the possibility of a recession. I'd say that the drop-off this month has been about 30%. People are reluctant to spend money on things that they may see as not necessary. I've been in the Strand Arcade for 8 years now. I think it's affecting all businesses in retail. I have quite close contact to the community of retailers here in the Strand Arcade, and they're all saying the same thing. Whether it's Nino who runs the restaurant, it's Alan who does the repairs, we're all affected in some way. And they're basically saying the same thing, that sales are down, people are not spending money. I think there is a sense of collective nervousness. Retailers are feeling uncertain. I don't think they know what's happening.
That's small business, but what about the top end of town? Even in a downturn, Australians will always shell out for some products, even if they're on a budget, and one of them is soft drink. This Coca-Cola amateur warehouse in Melbourne supplies the fizz for Victoria and Tasmania. Leading up to Christmas, it sends out 250,000 cases every day. The company invests about $300 million in Australia each year on factories, warehouses and trucks. But even with that, growth is hard to come by.
I think it is pretty challenging for any of us to be finding growth at the moment. We're still growing, but it's pretty hard-won growth, I would say. And, if we look at the stats, it tells us that a lot of households are, in real terms at least, worse off than they were, say, 10 years ago. And I think that, people are just not seeing as they look forward any reasons for that to change.
Do you think that the rate cuts that the Reserve Bank has been making this year have had the perverse effect of scaring people?
I think there is an element of that, and this sort of sense of battening down the hatches, I think it does reinforce from the consumer point of view that, boy, things are looking a little bit dire.
For millennials like Joel Katavalil, what we're seeing in the economy means the great Australian dream of owning your own home may always be just that, a dream.
Goals such as buying a house or buying an apartment would be, something that's a bit daunting to people of my sort of generation, I guess. I think there are times when I almost feel as if it's, a lifetime away, or it's going to take quite a long time for me to get there. But you're always hearing, I guess, news about property prices going high and property prices going low. So I think, when there's a lot of confusion about what's going to happen, I think it's a bit, it is a bit scary at times.
All right, catch you later. The Australian economy seems to be stuck in low gear no matter what we do.
Thanks, Joel. See you, mate.
One reason for that is the amount of debt we're in. And we'll take a look at that tomorrow night.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.